Entering the Vietnamese market as a foreign investor offers significant opportunities for growth and expansion. One of the most direct routes is establishing a 100% foreign direct investment company. In Vietnamese legal terms, this entity is formally known as a Foreign Invested Economic Organization. It is a company where the entire charter capital is contributed by one or more foreign investors. This structure provides the maximum level of control over operations, strategic decisions, and profits, which is a major draw for international entrepreneurs. Unlike joint ventures, it does not require a local partner, simplifying the management structure and eliminating potential conflicts of interest that can arise from shared ownership. The legal framework governing these enterprises is primarily the Law on Investment 2020. This legislation outlines the specific procedures, rights, and obligations for foreign investors. It is crucial to understand that the process for setting up a 100% FDI company is distinctly different and more complex than the process for a domestic Vietnamese enterprise. The government has put in place a multi-layered approval system designed to vet projects, ensure they align with national development goals, and protect sensitive sectors. This means foreign investors must navigate a series of regulatory checkpoints before they can officially commence business operations in the country. Before embarking on this journey, the initial preparation phase is absolutely critical for a smooth process. This involves more than just having a business idea. It requires careful planning of your investment capital and the meticulous preparation of all necessary documentation. The required capital amount is not always explicitly defined by a single national law, but can be influenced by the nature of your business, the project's scale, and the specific requirements of the provincial authorities where you plan to establish your company. Gathering the right documents, from personal identification to detailed project proposals and proof of financial capacity, is the foundational step upon which your entire application will be built. It is important to approach this process with a clear, step-by-step mindset. The journey involves securing an investment registration certificate, or IRC, which is unique to foreign investors, followed by an enterprise registration certificate, or ERC, which is required for all companies. Along the way, you may need to obtain an investment policy approval, a requirement for certain types of projects. Each stage has its own set of required documents, processing times, and government agencies to deal with. Understanding this sequence from the outset will help you manage expectations, allocate resources effectively, and avoid common pitfalls that can delay or derail your market entry. The first major legal step for a foreign investor is to secure an investment registration certificate, commonly known as the IRC. This certificate is the government's official acknowledgement and approval of your specific investment project in Vietnam. It is a mandatory prerequisite for all projects funded entirely by foreign investors. The IRC application process requires you to submit a detailed dossier to the relevant licensing authority, which is typically the Department of Planning and Investment in the province or city where your business will be located. This document essentially legitimizes your status as a foreign investor and your project's right to exist within the country's legal and economic framework. In many cases, before you can even apply for the IRC, you must first obtain an approval of your investment policy. This is an additional layer of scrutiny reserved for projects that have a significant potential impact on the local environment, society, or national security. For example, projects that require the government to allocate or lease land, projects that involve changing the designated use of land, or those that utilize technologies on a restricted list, will need this prior approval. This step ensures that large-scale or sensitive investments are carefully reviewed by the appropriate authorities before they are allowed to proceed to the next stage of formal registration. The dossier required for both the investment policy approval and the IRC application is comprehensive and must be prepared with great attention to detail. Key documents typically include a formal written proposal for the project, legal identification for the investor, such as a passport for an individual or a business registration certificate for an organization, and a detailed description of the investment project itself. This description must cover your objectives, the proposed scale of operations, the total investment capital, the physical location, the project implementation schedule, labor requirements, and any proposed investment incentives you are seeking from the government. Furthermore, you must provide concrete evidence of your financial capacity to execute the project. This is a non-negotiable requirement and can be demonstrated through documents like audited financial statements from the last 2 years, a commitment from a parent company to provide financial support, a guarantee from a financial institution, or other documents proving you have the necessary funds. If your project involves the use of land, you will also need to submit a proposal for land use or provide documents that prove you have the right to use a specific location for your project. This thorough documentation is designed to show the authorities that your project is viable, well-planned, and backed by sufficient resources. The level of government authority required to approve your investment policy depends entirely on the scale, nature, and potential impact of your project. Vietnam has a clear 3-tiered system of approval, ranging from the local provincial level to the highest levels of national government. For the majority of standard investment projects, the approval authority rests with the Provincial People's Committee. This is the most common scenario for foreign investors. Projects falling under this category are typically those that require land allocation from the state or involve technologies that are subject to transfer restrictions, but do not meet the criteria for higher-level review. The second tier of approval involves the Prime Minister of Vietnam. This level of oversight is reserved for projects of significant national importance or those with a wide-ranging impact. For instance, if your project involves the resettlement of a large number of people, such as 10,000 or more in mountainous regions or 20,000 or more in other areas, it will require the Prime Minister's approval. Other projects that fall into this category include the construction and operation of airports and seaports, petroleum exploration and processing, large-scale housing developments, telecommunications infrastructure with network services, and the establishment of casinos or large golf courses. Any project that spans multiple provinces also requires this high-level approval. The highest and most stringent level of approval comes from the National Assembly, Vietnam's legislative body. This tier is reserved for a very small number of projects that have a profound and potentially irreversible impact on the country's environment, society, or national security. Examples include the construction of nuclear power plants or projects that require the conversion of large areas of land, such as repurposing special-use forests or protected watershed forests. Furthermore, projects that necessitate the resettlement of 20,000 or more people in mountainous regions or 50,000 or more in other areas will be subject to National Assembly review. This level of scrutiny ensures maximum oversight for investments with far-reaching consequences. Understanding which tier of approval your project falls under is essential for planning your timeline and preparing the correct documentation. The dossier for Prime Minister or National Assembly approval is even more extensive than that for provincial approval. It often requires additional detailed assessments, such as preliminary environmental impact studies, socio-economic impact evaluations, and comprehensive plans for land clearance and resettlement. The approval process at these higher levels is naturally longer and more complex, reflecting the gravity of the projects being considered. Therefore, correctly identifying the required approval authority from the very beginning is a critical strategic step. Once you have successfully obtained your Investment Registration Certificate, or IRC, the next major milestone is to officially establish your company by securing an Enterprise Registration Certificate, also known as the ERC. This certificate is what legally creates your business entity in Vietnam, whether it is a limited liability company or a joint stock company. The application for the ERC is submitted to the Business Registration Authority of the Provincial Department of Planning and Investment. This step transitions your status from an approved investment project to a fully fledged operational legal entity with its own tax code and legal standing. The documentation required for the ERC application is distinct from the IRC dossier and focuses on the corporate structure of your new company. For a limited liability company, you will need to submit a formal application for business registration, the company charter or articles of association, a list of company members, and legalized copies of the members' legal documents. For a joint stock company, the requirements are similar, but include a list of the founding shareholders. A crucial component of this application package is the IRC you previously obtained. All documents issued by a foreign authority must be consularized, which is a process of legalization that verifies their authenticity for use in Vietnam. The processing time for the ERC application is, honestly, remarkably efficient. By law, the Business Registration Authority must issue the certificate within 3 working days from the date they receive a complete and valid dossier. This swift turnaround is a positive feature of Vietnam's business environment. Immediately after receiving your ERC, you are legally required to make a public announcement of your company's establishment. This must be done on the National Business Registration Portal. The announcement includes key details from your ERC, your registered business lines, and, for a joint stock company, the list of founding shareholders, ensuring transparency about your new enterprise. With the ERC in hand, your company legally exists. But there are a few final post-establishment tasks to complete before you can begin full operations. One of the most important is to engrave the official company seal. While Vietnamese law now allows enterprises to decide on the form and number of their seals, having one is still a standard and often necessary business practice for signing contracts and official documents. You must use a licensed seal-making unit for this service. After this, you will proceed with opening a corporate bank account, registering for taxes, and obtaining any additional licenses or permits specific to your industry, completing your setup process. When planning your investment, a common question is about the minimum required capital. Officially, Vietnam's law on investment does not specify a universal minimum investment capital for all sectors. However, this does not mean you can register with a nominal amount. In practice, local licensing authorities, such as the Department of Planning and Investment in major cities like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City, have unwritten expectations. For a typical service-based company, authorities often expect to see a registered capital of at least $10,000 to demonstrate seriousness and financial viability. For more capital-intensive sectors like manufacturing, this expected amount can be significantly higher. The timeline for establishing your 100% FDI company can vary greatly depending on the complexity of your project and the required approval level. If your project does not require an investment policy approval, you can expect the process of obtaining the IRC and ERC to take approximately 1 to 2 months. However, if your project does require approval from the Provincial People's Committee, the timeline can extend to 2 or 3 months. For projects requiring approval from the Prime Minister or the National Assembly, the process is substantially longer, potentially taking 6 months to a year or more due to the extensive reviews and interagency consultations involved. Given the nuances of the legal framework and the potential for variations in local practice, it is highly advisable to seek professional legal assistance. Engaging a reputable law firm or a business consultancy with deep experience in FDI in Vietnam can be honestly invaluable. These experts can provide precise guidance on the appropriate level of investment capital for your specific industry and province, ensuring your application is viewed favorably. They will also manage the entire dossier preparation process, making sure all documents are correctly drafted, translated, and legalized, which minimizes the risk of rejection or delays due to administrative errors. In conclusion, while the path to establishing a 100% foreign-owned company in Vietnam is structured and transparent, it is also detailed and demanding. Success hinges on careful preparation, a thorough understanding of the legal steps, and a realistic assessment of timelines and capital requirements. The Vietnamese government continues to encourage foreign investment, but it does so within a regulatory framework designed to ensure that new projects are sustainable and beneficial. Always remember to verify the latest regulations, as laws and local practices can evolve. Partnering with local legal experts will not only simplify the process but will also provide you with a solid foundation for your business success in this dynamic market.